Hi, this is Louis Paul. It's the Colors of Prague, Season 5, Episode 8. This is the Edgar Froese solo years, 1974 to 1983, also known as the Virgin Records years. Now, his last name is spelled Froese, and it's often mispronounced Rose or Fruse, but it's actually Froese, Edgar Froese. So just wanted to straighten that out. That's the actual German pronunciation. So although the late Tangerine, he was the founder of Tangerine Dream, by the way. So although the late Tangerine Dream founder, Edgar Froese, actually um, born in what was called East Russia in 1944. He recorded with Tangerine Dream until his death in 2015. But for years afterwards, sessions and live performances recorded with him, but not released prior to his death, they're still turning up. Tangerine Dream toured a lot. He worked a lot. He did a lot of solo work. He did a lot of work with sessions with the band, Tangerine Dream. Dido for late period solo material still coming out through the label. So these Virgin albums, I have these on vinyl, but for the smart shopper, this once affordable, I'm not sure if it is now, 4 CD clamshell box set collects his first 6 solo albums for Tangerine Dream label Virgin Records. Now, if you're not too familiar with early Tangerine Dream or just thought or knew them through their prolific soundtrack work, they are among the pioneers in electronic music, um, often creating mood and mind-altering sounds through the music they play. They used Edgar and his the members of the band. They changed over the years, of course. Used a variety of keyboards, synthesizers, Moog, mellotrons, electronically treated electric guitars, and the like, including drums and electronically treated percussion. And they use sequencers and modulators, and they use medical equipment used for patient monitoring to alter tempos. I mean, these guys were he was brilliant, and the early band members were geniuses. And the first album, electronic uh, meditation, electronic music, even featured Klaus Schultz, who went on Ashra Temple and his own voluminous solo career, voluminous amount of music he made. The first album in this set is Aqua, and it was released in 1974. And Froese experimented with a binaural recording process, especially on the third track. It's called NGC 891, which also features the sounds of planes and jets whooshing by, often percolating, gurgling, blooping and bleeping beneath an often, and this is a Tangerine Dream trademark, repetitive sound, but altered. So it doesn't always sound the same, but it does and it doesn't. It's familiar sounding, but is it? It's that was the whole thing with the Tangerine Dream sound. It was just wash over you. And the rhythm was programmed into a sequencer. And back in the day, this was experimental as all fuck. I mean, nobody's doing this stuff. It's just really, really out there. And I love how NGC seems to also feature a barely audible car alarm going off, and in the distance, and you're like, am I hearing that? Is that what's going on? Just layer of sound, wall of sound, not like Phil Spector and the work he did, with girl groups and the Beatles on Let It Be and other work he did. This is just a wall of electronic sound with diversion. It's pretty crazy. I love how Tangerine Dream, and especially their earliest albums, and on Aqua and his other solo work, he increases rhythm and then decreases it only to increase it again. What was going on in Edgar Froese's mind is just like, wow, it's just crazy stuff. When I was in my youth, I first discovered this music on college radio stations with low reaching antennas, weak antenna signals. Um, and they were programming late into the night and early morning. And it's my first exposure to Tangerine Dream was college radio stations in New Jersey. And I didn't even live in New Jersey at the time. And I'm like, what is this? And I'd stay up really super late listening to this. And then I was like, you could mind altering, right? Like the previous show, psychedelic, prog and pop and country blues, and but this is entirely different. So the first disc, now what they did on this release is they split up the albums. They did something really weird. So disc one includes side one of Aqua, all of Aqua, and side one of his second solo album from 1975, Epsilon and Malaysian Pale. And that one only consisted of two 17-minute tracks. Yeah, Froese was noted that he was influenced by a trip to Malaysia, the Malaysian jungle, and a trip to a large park in Australia. Both of these took place in 74. So this album also came out in 75, I wanted to mention. There's more Mellotron in use than on Aqua, and it's still different enough from the Tangerine Dream albums of the period. I think I'm thinking Phaedra and Rubicon or even Ricochet. They're around this time period. So it's pretty crazy, two just barely under 20-minute tracks, side one, side two, and it's just crazy stuff. Now, a side note here, he re-recorded many of his early solo albums in the digital format in 2005. But those crystal clear updates kind of lack the warmth of the original analog recordings. And when Virgin re-released these, they gave them a new sheen, but they worked from the original analog masters. So you can find and actually have some of the re-recorded versions into digital by Edgar Froese, but it sounds different. When you go digital to digital as opposed to analog, there's a lot to be said for that. But for purists, this is the original sound that you're getting. So disc two features side two of the original Epsilon and Malaysian and some extra tracks, a remix of that, and sides one and two of Ages, his 1977 album, which was a double record, two disc set. Now, having just scored William Friedkin's film Sorcerer in 1977, Froese More than likely, he wanted to step back from the darkness for a bit with Ages. As I said, it's a double album, more of the same, but it's one of the rare ones to feature drummer and future Tangerine Dream member Klaus Krieger. The drumming really uplifts some of the material here. Um, but the Tangerine Dream album that was released around this time period called Cyclone, which has some fans, um, features some sounds that he experimented with on Ages. One can only imagine how much music you could churn out year after year, and I guess he just worked like a madman. He was just like writing material, recording material, deciding what's going to be for Tangerine Dream and what is going to be for his own solo release. Disc 3 of this 3-disc set features side 3 and 4 of Ages, uh, and or rather, the second album. And there's a few alternate tracks. Now, some of these alternate tracks were released on Solo 74 to 79. This is a different version retrospective that featured alternate tracks. They only put a sample on here. Also on disc 3 is Stuntman, which features a more calmer, new age perhaps sound, but not quite. With Froese leaning toward a more or less experimental, more, dare I say, Vangelis kind of sound. Was it a bid for commercialism, perhaps? I don't know, but obviously we don't hear as much Mellotron on this album. Also, I'm sorry, there's 4 discs on the set, not 3. On disc 4 is the B side of Stuntman and All of Pinnacles, 1983. The Pinnacles is virtually identical to something like the Tangerine Dream album Hyperborea, released in 83, or White Eagle from 82. The Pinnacles, released in 83, is pretty much has that same kind of sound. But Hyperborea and White Eagle don't have as many fans in the Tangerine Dream. I mean, there are people who like it, but it's just not as much, put it that way. And by that time, Tangerine Dream featured Christoph Frank and Johann Schmoling, and this was a busy period for Edgar Froese because it was sandwiched between the soundtrack work for Michael Mann's Thief, the film Wavelength, Firestarter, and Flashpoint, starring Chris Christopherson, of all people. Although, as mentioned, Froese passed in 2015, in January of that year. Remaining members, Thorsten Korsting, Ulrich Schnaus, and Hoshiko Yamane, continue on with his music and new music based on the ideas and musical ideas of Edgar Froese. Now, this current version of Tangerine Dream had been re-recording earlier Tangerine Dream material, as well as new Tangerine Dream material based on the legend. And there's been quite, as I mentioned earlier, there's been quite the flood of live Tangerine Dream material all the way from the 70s through the 2000s and more. So, but this set from Virgin, it's just covering his earlier solo material. it is missing Kamikaze, his soundtrack for the German film director Fassbender. And I guess Virgin did not release that, so they didn't have the rights to that and probably didn't want to dig into their pocket to include that on this set. But he did do that during this time period of these solo albums. So anyway, that's the show. I just wanted to cover these Edgar Froese solo albums. And I don't speak enough about Tangerine Dream and what a huge influence they are on so much music and so many other bands. And if you can find this set, it's worth owning. But as I said, he re-recorded digitally, direct to digital, some of this, most of these, and they were released some after his death uh, to the marketplace. So there's that. Thanks for watching our show. I hope you enjoy. I'll be back soon.